Heyo, it's OmniDog from OmniDog's Vault. How's everybody doing today? This is Crime Corner, where my co-host Taylor Brown, how's it going, Taylor?
I'm doing great, Jess.
We talk about crime comics.
Yes, this is our first live Crime Corner.
And no, sorry, Travis Gilmer. I wouldn't even know how to get it to you safely.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the first casualty to go in this war in the grocery store.
Right. But yeah, we focus on crime comics, and we've had some really good books that we've read. I would say one of the books we read this week was the crimiest crime story we've ever crimed, man. It is so crimey.
Well, I hope you like it. We'll get to that book in a little bit. First, we're going to focus on probably the more popular series first. We're going to focus on James Bond by Warren Ellis. So he only did 2 books through Dynamite. We can only speak to these 2 hardcovers because the Omni has not come out yet at this point on March 17th, 2020. So we can't speak to how well put together the Omni is. So we can only speak to these 2 hardcovers. And since this is a live show, feel free to leave us some questions. We'll try to make sure to answer as many questions as you guys want us to answer. So just make sure you leave those and we'll try to get to them. We want this to be an interactive video.
Yeah, even though most people are probably, I don't know, maybe they're at work, maybe they're at home working, or maybe they're eating a piece of cheesecake. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, we usually do Crime Corner pre-recorded, but we thought some of you might be going stir crazy at home and you wanted to have a little bit of escape with a live show. So it's an experiment. We'll see if it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Either way, we were going to do a show. So
that's true. But Jazz, let's talk about how we felt about James Bond by Warren Ellis.
The first book I read, Varger.
They both have interesting titles.
Yeah, they do. Now, at the end of the show, we're going to talk about our favorite James Bond and James Bond movies and things like that. So this was this Bond looked like sort of a generic Pierce Brosnan Bond, I guess.
I read that Jason Masters did his Bond after the Ian Fleming descriptions in the original books.
Okay.
So
I actually read those books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I heard that Masters, the artist of this series, tried his best to recreate the way Fleming described him in the original novels.
Okay. Good. Well, here's some of the art. And I thought the art was spot on. It was very good. And there's Jim Bond right there in the chair.
Jim Bond. Never heard that before. That's like an American version of James Bond. Jim Bond.
So
do you want me to read some of the do you want me to read the summary on the back for people?
Sure, that's fine. While I show the art.
All right, so after a mission of revenge in Helsinki, James Bond returns to London and assumes the workload of a fallen 00 section agent. His new mission takes him to Berlin, presumably to break up an agile drug trafficking operation. But Bond has no idea of the forces gathered in secret against him, the full scope of an operation that's much scarier and more lethal than he could possibly imagine. Berlin is about to catch fire, and James Bond is trapped inside. So I agree with you, Jess, that Master's style, the artist, is very clean. It's very straightforward. I think he does action scenes really well. He has a lot of great fast-paced car chases, as well as drawing a lot of dudes getting bullets to the head. He did a really good job. It's a Warren Ellis book, so you know people are going to get killed a lot, especially with bullets to the head.
Here's some right here.
Right. I thought that Ellis's Bond was very dry, very sarcastic and humorous. He's cracking a joke 1 minute and killing guys the next. So he could go from like 0 to 60 in just a drop of a dime.
Which is kind of how I like my Bond, quite frankly.
Right. I thought he did a great job. I think Warren Ellis is a fantastic writer for James Bond.
I agree.
I think he captures the essence of what makes Bond special, that he's charming, he's suave, he's debonair, but he's also able to be a deadly assassin, among the deadliest that you've ever seen in novels and films and video games. I think he really captured that aspect of Bond really well.
And the series, what I liked about both books, and we'll just talk about this one to begin with, is that it it leads you into places that aren't red herrings, but he gets surprised as much as you get surprised. There's a lot of conspiracies going on in this book. One major one in particular, and I thought it was riveting the way he uncovers the conspiracy, the way he's able to defend himself with some people that are genetically enhanced or robotically enhanced. So I loved this book, and where it took him and how it took him to different places and how he was insistent he was going to finish the mission. I just thought it was great.
And Doc Collector just asked if the Bond Omni or Complete Collection ever got printed. I believe it's coming out the next few weeks. I believe it's coming out very soon.
I think the Bond Omni's for April. I think. I'm not positive.
I'm pretty sure it got pushed back, didn't it? I think it was going to be March, and they pushed it to April. So I think that's the case. So Jess has me on here to be a little bit more critical. I personally no, wait, Jess, let me get it out. Hold on. I really was entertained by this book. It was a lot of fun. I have 2 critiques if Jess will allow me to bring them to our attention.
I will allow it.
So I thought the central villains were really interesting and the plot was intriguing. But once the main villain gives his monologue and explains why he did what he did, it didn't really make sense. It was like, wait, what? Why'd you do it?
Yeah, I agree that was a weak ass motivation.
That held it back for me for being a 10 out of 10.
I agree.
It was an 8 out of 10 for me, which is still really good. That held me back from that because I didn't understand why the main bad guy was doing what he was doing.
Yeah.
And second of all, I have the same critique that I have for the modern day movies, that they have like no cool Bond gadgets in this book. And this is a big missed opportunity for me because Warren Ellis is known for his out-of-the-box scientific ideas. He could have really run wild in this book and come out with these really cool gadgets, these new ideas, but he really didn't. I wanted him to go to Q, the quartermaster, and get a cool fancy watch that did electrocuted people or did something. I wanted him to get a really cool hidden deadly weapon in the pen, but all he got was a gun and bullets. So that was kind of a missed opportunity for me.
Okay.
I really missed that element of the old school James Bond movies, getting ridiculous, over the top gadgets from Q. I don't know if you like that aspect of those old movies or not.
I like the aspect of the movies, but I'm not basing my appreciation on the book for the absence of those.
I guess I just was kind of disappointed because Warren Ellis is so known for progressive scientific intellectual ideas.
Yeah.
And I thought he could have done a really fantastic job of making up really cool gadgets that Bond could have used to accomplish his mission. But those are just 2 small critiques that hold it back from being a 10 out of 10 for me. But again, it's a very excellent story that I greatly loved.
Right. I loved it too.
So we'll get to the second one. That's even harder to pronounce. Eidolon. And we can't talk about what this word means. That's a spoiler.
Right.
So we cannot tell you what that word exactly means. We don't want to ruin the book for you. In my opinion, this volume is even better than the first.
Right, I agree.
I thought the plot, the villains, and the side characters were much more interesting than the first volume. Because Ellis somewhat ignored the female characters in the first volume, and he rectifies this oversight in volume 2 with 3 awesome female characters that take center stage at certain points in the book. They aren't just the regular Bond babes. They're fully active characters who have agency, who have intelligence, who are able to really kick butt. I really enjoyed all the 3 main female characters in this book.
Yeah, and here's one of them.
Let me read the summary on the back as Jess continues to show off artwork.
Cadence Birdwhistle is her name.
That's such a Bond girl name.
That is.
James Bond is trapped in Los Angeles under fire alongside another MI6 agent with a foreign intelligence service, or perhaps more than just one, trying to put them in body bags. Things may not be any safer in Britain, with bodies dropping and ghosts moving in the political mist. So that doesn't really tell you a lot about what happens in the book, but I don't want to get into spoilers and tell you exactly what the plot is. And I like that little panel right down there at the bottom, Jess, where Bond has to get rid of his gun. He's in America. And he's like, and she's like, well, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm just going to put it in a waste bin. This is America, so anyone can find it. But that was pretty funny. Some funny social satire.
Yeah.
What did you think about the villains and the plot of this certain volume?
Oh, I thought this was way intricate and way interesting. I did like it better than the first book. I like the strong female protagonists, all three of them. I like the idea of the woman being in danger because she discovered a money trail that leads to, we can't say what it leads to because that would give it away.
It's an organization of sorts.
Yeah, an organization of sorts in Britain. And I mean, this thing is action packed and Bond kicks ass. And he does a great job. Warren Ellis does a great job of really making it not so intricate that you can't enjoy it, but intricate enough that you're like, oh, whoa, this is really cool where this is going. I really enjoy this. And I thought the main villain's motivation was a lot more understandable in this book.
I agree totally with that. And I think, again, the action scenes in these books are so awesome. Just the way they take out all the different bad guys. I like the ending of this book. It was very inventive and creative. It was a really perfect way to capstone this series. I am disappointed that Warren Ellis didn't do more books in the James Bond universe, though. I know we always joke around that Warren Ellis has comic ADHD, that he doesn't really stick with any series for too long. So I'm not really surprised, but these are two really great, solid, entertaining volumes I think are well worth your time and attention.
Yeah, you will be happy buying these James Bond books. They are great.
I do have a word of warning about those two hardcovers. They are very noisy.
Yeah, they are kind of crackly.
But it doesn't really affect the binding that I've noticed. I've read through these twice. I read through these last year and then for this show a couple days ago. And it doesn't seem like it's affecting the binding, and the book's not falling apart or anything.
No.
It must just be the glue or something they used. Or I don't know. Maybe it's just the binding inside. It kind of crackles and pops. It's kind of like Rice Krispies while you're reading it.
Yeah. Joe Cool, we just reviewed James Bond, 2 books by Warren Ellis. And we really liked the first one, but loved the second one, Eidolon. And we highly recommend him. Warren Ellis knows how to write Ian Fleming's James Bond.
Yeah, so Varger is an 8 out of 10. Eidolon is a 9 out of 10 for me.
I go 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
All right. We're pretty close then. And
yeah.
Can you highlight Barry Allen's comment there? So these comics are not based off of any particular book by Ian Fleming. But like I said earlier, if you missed it in the video earlier on, Jason Masters, the artist, did try to recreate how Fleming described Bond in the novels. So this is a totally original story, but it's based in the Ian Fleming universe, from what I understand.
Yeah.
They even call it Ian Fleming's James Bond, which is not on any of the posters for the movies that ever come out. It never says Ian Fleming's James Bond, I don't believe. And these aren't the only James Bond books. They're the only ones that I've read, though. There are a bunch of other series by writers like Andy Diggle, Greg Pak, Kieran Gillen, and others that I do want to check out. They are all on Hoopla, so we can read them for free before buying them. But Warren Ellis is an automatic buy for me in those situations. So I'm going to check out the other ones on Hoopla to see if they're worth my pickup. And the omnibus might be the way to go.
You froze a little bit. The omnibus might be the way to go. And you froze.
Am I still here?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, sorry. I don't know what's going on. I'll turn off the YouTube link for right now.
Oh,
so
whoa!
You can check out the comments.
We got a super chat. Thank you, Mark French. Glad to have more great content from you guys. Excited to pick up the Omni in April. Stocking up on books for imminent lockdown in Seattle. Be safe there in Seattle, Mark, and thank you so much for the super chat. That's really nice. I'll have to send Taylor a check for $250.
Oh, thank you. I greatly appreciate that. Anything helps right now.
Yeah.
Oh, someone says, I remember James Bond comics from the 90s.
I don't.
I know there weren't any. Can you tell us who published those and who wrote them? Because I had no idea about those.
I didn't know either.
All right, Jess. So let's talk about some of our movie recommendations for James Bond. This is pretty obvious. Watch some James Bond movies.
Yeah.
But what are your personal? Let's do this first. Who is your favorite James Bond actor?
Well, now that is a good question because I grew up with Sean Connery as my James Bond. And I love James Bond. I saw all the James Bond movies with Sean Connery in them. And so he was always my Bond. And I did not take to anybody after him.
We're not Roger Moore fans here.
I'm afraid not. Roger just didn't sell it to me. They seem too jokey to me, too almost comical to me, those ones. And I didn't watch the Timothy Dalton or Remington Steele guy. What's his name?
Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, Pierce Brosnan. I never watched those because I didn't believe him I just didn't believe him. But Daniel Craig and Casino Royale, after growing up with Sean Connery and loving Dr. No and all those other great movies, that is my favorite Bond movie, Casino Royale.
I have it right here.
Oh my gosh, I saw that and it changed the way I thought about Bond. It completely changed it.
I watched this over the weekend because these books got me in the mood to watch some Bond movies. That is by far my favorite Bond movie. And Daniel Craig is my personal favorite, but I obviously have a soft place in my heart for Sean Connery because he was the original Bond. One of my favorite Bond movies, my favorite old school Bond movie is Goldfinger.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Classic moments, like when he's on the table with the laser beam.
Yeah.
You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Yeah.
That's the best James Bond moment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Or whenever Odd Job has his hat and he throws it and cuts the statue's head off. I just think that was a great movie. I think Goldfinger is one of the best Bond villains as well.
Yeah.
George Lazenby, is that the guy who did that one-off James Bond movie?
Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Yeah, no one really talks about that movie.
Yeah, for a good reason.
Yeah, Joe Cool. It's cool if you like Roger Moore. He just doesn't really meet up to my standards and my personal taste. I never believed him as Bond. I believed him as the debonair, like suave British gentleman. I didn't believe him as like a killer. And Daniel Craig is able to do both at the same time, I think. He can turn on the charm, but he can also really be believable as a deadly killer. I think it's all in the eyes. Like his like really cool blue eyes really just has like this sense of like murder in a sense that he could really take people out if he wants to. So I really love Casino Royale. My second favorite Bond movie is Skyfall.
I haven't seen that. I need to.
You haven't seen Skyfall. The weird thing about the Daniel Craig movies is that it seems like every other movie is good. Because I liked Casino Royale. I didn't like Quantum of Solace. I loved Skyfall, but I didn't like Spectre that much. So I'm excited for the new one, No Time to Die. But unfortunately, that's not coming out till November because of the coronavirus. Because it was going to come out in a couple weeks.
Right.
We'll have to wait a little bit longer. Apparently, they're going to be losing like $30 to $50 million because if they had to move it. So that's sad.
That is sad.
So we seem to both agree that we love Daniel Craig as our favorite, but we have a really special place in our heart for Sean Connery.
Yep, totally.
So besides Casino Royale, what is like your favorite old school Bond movie?
Well, you already said Goldfinger. I loved Goldfinger. I watched that within the past couple of years. I really loved it. I'm trying to think of there's a I like the soundtracks to the Bond movies too. That's what I really like. And that song that Chris Cornell did for Casino Royale, Cranked, that was such a rockin' song. So I would say You Only Live Twice and Dr. No and Goldfinger are probably my favorite.
I've never seen You Only Live Twice.
That's got a great soundtrack with Nancy Sinatra singing.
Is that one of the last Sean Connery movies?
No, I don't think so. There was From Russia with Love.
Oh, and Diamonds Are Forever. Is that
Diamonds Are Forever. Yeah, there were a few.
I definitely haven't seen every single James Bond movie, though. I've seen a majority, but definitely not all of them. Like, I don't think I've seen I think there's two Timothy Dalton ones. I think A License to Kill, and there's another one. But I definitely haven't watched a lot of the Roger Moore ones. I watched Moonraker and was like, no thanks. I don't think this is for me.
Yeah.
I agree with Barry Allen that Pierce Brosnan is good in Goldeneye, and every other Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie after that is very subpar. I also have a really special place in my heart for Goldeneye because I think it's one of the greatest video games of all time.
Yeah.
The N64. I don't think there's ever been a better first-person shooter than Goldeneye. I had so much fun playing that.
Reset and made you go back to the beginning of the scene. It didn't have save points. I hated that.
And my mom always made me put it on to paintball mode. Do you remember that? Where you shot people and instead of blood, it'd be a big paint splotch.
I didn't know that that mode existed.
You can also make their heads really big too.
I remember that.
You can shoot them in the head really easily. I just love that game so much.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever be able to one-up that gaming experience as a kid.
That is a clutch game.
It really is a great game. All right, so we both agree that you need to read these two books. You can read them on Hoopla, but I think they're definitely worth the pickup for the hardcover or the omnibus when it comes out. I think someone said April 15th. So sometime in April, pick these books up. So Jess, let's talk about a very little-known book that I told you to read, and that's 8 Million Ways to Die, which is an adaptation of Lawrence Block's novel from back in, I think it's 1983 or so. So if you've watched our shows for any amount of time, you know that my favorite subgenre of crime is the private eye novel. I think the PI in literature is a great character. They're a voice for the voiceless. They're a champion for the underdog. They'll always stand up against the big guy and stand up for the little guy. And I love literary PIs like Philip Marlowe, Easy Rollins, Travis McGee, Charlie Parker, Happen Leonard. And one of my favorites is in this volume, and that's Matthew Scudder. And so Matthew Scudder is an ex-NYPD officer who leaves the force for a reason I don't want to spoil. You figure out why that happens in this book. He isn't exactly a licensed PI, though. And he tells us in the book that he does favors for people, and sometimes people give him gifts. So he's probably not the IRS's favorite guy. Tyler Blunt would turn him in for sure for not paying his taxes. I just really greatly enjoyed this book. I read the novel a couple weeks before I read this comic, and it's a great adaptation. Every line of dialogue, every text block is straight out of the novel. John Snyder does a perfect job of transcribing this great crime novel into a graphic novel format. So I want to hear Jess's thoughts on this book.
Well, the first thing, actually, why don't you read the back and I'll show some of the art.
All right,
the art's really good.
It's very unique, too.
Yeah.
In crime-ravaged 1980s New York, a troubled ex-cop turned unlicensed detective takes on his most dangerous case, hunting down a serial killer hitman and ultimately coming face-to-face with his deadliest enemy, himself. Matthew Scudder is dying, one bottle at a time. A young prostitute is dying too, her life measured out in tricks. She wanted out, had asked for Scudder's help, but suddenly she wasn't dying anymore, she was just dead. The former cop turned PI promised to protect her, but he failed. Now his atonement is to find her killer, but the secrets in the dead prostitute's past are dirtier than her living, and searching for a killer in a city where everyone's a victim is a good way to make the role permanent. So it's really important to tell people that this book is set in the 1980s. This isn't a very politically correct comic book. Its world is very harsh. It's very much a time capsule of a certain time in America's history, a certain time in New York's history. This isn't 2020 New York. This is 1980s New York when it was very crime-ridden and a lot of darkness was going on. So this is a very different New York.
And we have another $5 super chat from Mark French. Kind of crime-related. Jess, did you pick up Morbus Gravis Deluxe Edition today? Thoughts on that? I totally forgot it was IST Tuesday, so I haven't made an order yet. I will check it out and get back to you, Mark. Thank you for reminding me. I hadn't even clued into it. I've been so busy actually reading these books. But thank you for the super chat. I greatly appreciate it.
Was Mark the other guy who gave us the super chat as well?
I think so too, yeah.
Thanks, Mark. We greatly appreciate that. That's awesome.
Well, the first thing I noticed about this, of course, is because I'm an alcoholic. was all the AA meetings he had to go to, that he would drop into, not identify himself, and stay 8 days sober, and then go right back out on a bender and end up in the hospital.
And he would say, "Pass," or I don't feel like talking today at all the meetings.
Right. Which is common. So it got the AA meeting. As far as I could tell, they didn't go in depth into the AA meeting thing, but he is an alcoholic, and it eats at him constantly, which it does. So Lawrence Block and the adapter John Snyder got that completely right.
Lawrence Block is an alcoholic as well. So
Okay.
he writes out a personal experience. It really gets a lot deeper into the meetings in the novel itself, which they obviously can't get into in the graphic novel.
Right. So it was, at some points it was a little tough for me, and this is my experience only because I'm an alcoholic, was just to see him struggle so much with it, because I can relate to that. He had easy access to bars and liquor stores, and not much of a spiritual condition, and not much of a real, it didn't seem like he had a real motivation to stay sober, other than the fact that it was killing him. But that's how a lot of AAs get into the program. And
his backstory is so dark too. For why he left the force, it makes sense why he gave himself over to alcoholism. And also, you find out that he has a wife and kids on Staten Island that he's abandoned.
Right.
Like, he sends them money whenever he can, but he's pretty much left their lives. He thinks it's better for them to be away from him.
So he is miserable, and booze is the only way out for him that he can see. And I can totally relate to that. I understand that completely, especially living a life where you see humanity's dregs way up close, and you're trying to solve crime, and you're seeing the worst of the worst. I'm not surprised he's an alcoholic. That's but some of those scenes were hard for me to see, just because, even though I have almost 12 years, not yet 12 years, but 11 years and 10 and 12 months, 5-6 months. It's at the end of May. It's still hard for me to see somebody struggle with it, because it would be so easy for me to go back to it. But on the other hand, I empathize with him so much more than maybe I would have had I not been alcoholic. I can see what a real struggle it is and how it eats away at him.
Would you say it's a realistic portrayal?
Yeah. I can't speak to the meetings, because these were meetings set back in the 80s. Meetings now in 2020 are completely different. And meetings are going to be different from city to city, state to state. Every meeting's different, so you can't really say this is what a meeting's like. But it didn't hinder, when he was sober, it didn't hinder his ability to put all the pieces together and make what I thought was an impenetrable crime actually solve it. And I thought it was remarkable. I loved this book, and I thought it was really remarkable how he solved the crime. He used lots of resources in the police department. He had friends with connections out on the outside that would help him. He was doing all the PI dirty work kind of thing. He had a woman that was trying to help him stay sober. He didn't, as far as I can tell, he didn't have a sponsor, but I don't want to get too much into AA here. This is about the crime book. But this was definitely gritty, dark, New York City in the early 80s, when it was dangerous to go there. My daughter goes up there for a weekend now and just la-di-da, takes the whole bus and goes to Broadway and has wine parties with her friends in Central Park or whatever. And there's no way you could have done that back in the 80s.
And we're not trying to say that New York is crime-free now, but it was a much worse place back in 1980s.
Yeah.
Much worse. Yeah, I think the central crime in here is fantastic. And like you said, the way he solves it, the way that Lawrence Block gives you the breadcrumbs and really shows you how he cracks the case is phenomenal. I
Yeah.
thought the crime was very, very interesting. The main villain is mostly hidden throughout the series, but he's terrifying whenever you meet him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't want to get into that too much, but the panel layouts by John Snyder, I want to give him a shout out. I've never read anything by him before. He did a fantastic job doing the panel layouts of this book. This is one of the most original and creative books that I've read in a very long time. This book was a breath of fresh air for me. It's so easy to get caught in a rut where you feel like you're reading the same comic over and over again. This is unlike any other comic book that I've ever read. I don't know what you think about that.
I agree, and I'd like to read more of this kind of stuff because it's so different and so compelling and so interesting. This is the kind of thing I'd like to read more of.
And I messaged John Snyder on Instagram, and I said, will we be getting any more of these? And he said that him and Lawrence Block are in talks to make more of these in the future.
So this is the only one right now?
There's only one right now, but he hopes to make more in the future because there's like 17 Matthew Scudder books. So I'm sure he won't make that many, but maybe he'll pick the most popular ones because this is the most popular Matthew Scudder book out of the whole series. So maybe he'll make another one sometime soon. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And it was a struggle at times, but really gratifying for most of the part.
And the ending is powerful. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, it really is.
I just thought that was a really emotional moment, which I don't want to spoil for the readers, though, who haven't read it yet.
No, and that really spoke to me and made me feel better.
All right, good.
Yeah. So I can't find a thing wrong with this book. I thought it was 10 out of 10. Highest recommendation possible for this.
I just, again, want to give people the warning. I think, obviously, like you said, giving the alcohol warning is important for people to know what to expect. And also just knowing this is a 1980s really dark corner of the world where women were treated in a much different way than they are now. So definitely go into this book with the 1980s lens.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Don't go into it with the 2020 political correct lens that we all wear, which is good, but it's a little bit different back then in New York. Just want to warn people about that. So yeah. I have a movie recommendation. There have been 2 Matthew Scudder adaptations in the movies. The first one is notoriously bad, and that's they made an 8 Million Ways to Die movie back in the 80s starring Jeff Bridges, and they set it in Los Angeles, and Lawrence Block says he hates that movie. So I decided not to watch it. But there's a 2014 film called A Walk Among the Tombstones with Liam Neeson that's based on that novel, and this is very much so an overlooked gem, in my opinion.
Oh.
It is written and directed by one of my favorite screenwriters, Scott Frank, who wrote Get Shorty, Out of Sight, Minority Report. He wrote and directed a great crime movie in 2007, The Lookout, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Jeff Daniels, which was fantastic. I'm not sure why A Walk Among the Tombstones didn't get much acclaim or recognition. It's brilliantly written, acted, shot, and edited. I think a major reason is that the subject matter is very tough for people to swallow. This movie doesn't pull any punches. It's very dark. It's very grim. It's very much a harkening back to the 1970s crime movies like Taxi Driver and Dog Day Afternoon. It's very much in that vein. So in this movie, essentially Scudder is hired by a drug dealer to track down the guys who kidnapped and murdered his wife. And it turns out these guys are doing this to other people, that they'll kidnap someone, they'll give a ransom note, and then the people will pay the ransom, but they'll kill the person anyway. And they target drug dealers and people who are criminals because they know these people won't go to the cops. And so they turn to Matthew Scudder to track down these guys. And this movie really explores the banality of evil, that your next door neighbor could be a psychopath and you have no idea. That these guys seem so normal that you don't realize that evil is right in front of your face.
Wow.
And they can pop out at any time and just put you in their van and take you. This movie is definitely a gut punch in some ways. It's definitely disturbing. It's violent, but I think it's a fantastic crime movie that I think you would enjoy, Jess.
Okay.
But it definitely does delve into the alcoholism stuff as well.
Well, I'm going to have to deal with that. That's fine.
But in this movie, he is a recovering alcoholic. He still goes to meetings, but he has several years of sobriety under his belt in this,
Oh, good for him.
this movie. So it's a little bit different than 8 Million Ways to Die. And Liam Neeson is the perfect Matthew Scudder. I think this is a fantastic movie that you should add to your ever-growing list, Jess.
Ever-growing list is right.
Well, since you enjoyed the book so much, I think you'll like the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good. You'd think I would be able to watch some of these movies, but all I seem to be able to do is read comic books.
And Noir Wolf says that this movie got him into the book series.
Oh, okay.
That's true for me as well. I saw that the movie was coming out back in 2014. I delved into some of the books, and I love the books. And if Jess had time to read novels, I would tell him to read some of these books. But
no, I am missing my novels. I used to read a lot of them.
I feel bad that you can't read novels too. I need to be able to read both to keep my sanity.
I
Reading
just
one helps me
have the time.
I definitely understand. I definitely have less time to read novels now that we do 2 shows together. I definitely understand. You have like 20 million shows, so I get it. I just know that reading novels keeps comics fresh, and reading comics keeps novels fresh for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you're not able to do that anymore, but we all have to sacrifice some things, I guess. And you're sacrificing for the good of the channel and your viewers. So your sacrifice is not in vain.
Have you guys read the Ian Fleming Dynamite adaptations? We just got done talking about 2 Dynamite adaptations with James Bond by Warren Ellis. What other ones are you talking about, Ben?
Because they're not direct adaptations of any specific book. They're mainly just kind of an exploration of Ian Fleming's version of James Bond, I would say. But I do know they have, like I said earlier, they have a lot of other series by different writers besides Warren Ellis. So this isn't the only Bond books that are available right now by Dynamite. So Jess, do you want to get into our music recommendations?
I didn't read any music. I mean, I didn't listen to any music. I just listened to ambient music because I was in such a hurry to read these.
Oh, that's okay. I'll give my music recommendations then.
Okay.
And I listen to all these on Spotify. I listen to the James Bond Ultimate Soundtrack. This is a playlist on Spotify that contains all the scores from all the current Daniel Craig Bond movies. This includes Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, and Spectre. This is a perfect way to read through all of these books. And this playlist perfectly paired with my read-through of Ellis's Bond. So if you want to read these books or read James Bond books in general, go to Spotify and look up the James Bond Ultimate Soundtrack. It's a great playlist. And then for 8 Million Ways to Die, I listened to one of the greatest jazz musicians of all time, Miles Davis, and his album Kind of Blue. Even if you aren't a Miles Davis fan, I'm sure you've heard of him because of Billy Madison. So at least all of us know about Miles Davis to some degree. You remember that line from Billy Madison, Jess?
I don't.
If you think peeing your pants is cool, consider me Miles Davis. It's like the most random line that an old woman says to a group of kids.
I will say that I think You Only Live Twice is one of the best Bond soundtracks. Nancy Sinatra, not the most famous Sinatra to sing, but she really does it well. And there's lots of great instrumentals on that album. And of course, Goldfinger with Shirley Bassey singing Goldfinger.
So Jess, if you had to tell people to read which of these books, what would you pick? I'd like, go out and get this right now. Or would you say all of them?
All of them for different reasons. I think the Bond ones are more action-oriented spy crime books type of thing with lots of there's lots of action, but there's lots of intrigue and people who are supposed to be good flipping around and being bad. Whereas 8 Million Ways to Die is more of a straight-ahead crime mystery.
And a character study as well. Yeah,
and really gritty. So they're 2 very different books. It depends on the mood you're in. I would say if you're up for a gritty crime mystery, then 8 Million Ways to Die is great. And if you're wanting to read some great Warren Ellis, James Bond, then those are the books to get.
Yeah, I would say that the James Bond books are pure escapism fun. They're like summer blockbuster movies, whereas 8 Million Ways to Die kind of sticks with you after you read it, and it kind of makes you think. I think it definitely is dark. So if you're not into dark books, this isn't the book for you. But if you're disturbing and you like creepy things, like me and Jess, me and Jess like disturbing and creepy books. So this is definitely the book for you. And I really wanted to highlight this book because no one else talks about it. I think we're the only ones who've really talked about it on YouTube that I've seen. And I want to see more people picking this up on in-stock trades and on Amazon at your local comic book stores. So hoping we can get some of these books sold.
Great. Well, this has been a great Crime Corner. I appreciate all the people that showed up to chat. Thank you very much to the chatters, and thank you very much to everyone who's viewing this afterwards. If you could hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and please leave a comment, because we always leave comments. And remember, we are all in this together. The whole world is in on this together. So try to be nice to a complete stranger and watch the benefits that will happen if you can do that. Let somebody in line in Safeway. Let somebody in line out on the road if there's still cars on the road. But just try to be nice to a stranger. We're always, obviously, be nice to your friends and family, but just do a random act of kindness, and keep in mind that we're all in this whole thing together, and that we're going to need to rely on each other. So
read crime, don't commit crimes.
Right. Peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you, Taylor, for being part of the show, and I appreciate you as a host.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a great day.